You're listening to the Mike on the Right podcast.
Hello and welcome to Mike on the Right, second episode here on May 9th, 2025. I am your host, Mike Neal, broadcasting from the heart of the heartland in central Indiana, the great Hoosier State, bringing you another week of podcast excellence from a Christian conservative point of view. I am so excited that you're here. Thank you for tuning in, listening, watching, wherever you are streaming this episode. It is great to be with you today. There is so much I want to cover, and I'm just as if you're watching the video, you saw me reading something right before I got a text message from a friend who was discussing a topic that I was going to talk about today, and just more and more pouring out. I've even got some bonus items I want to talk about. I'm going to have to move quickly in order to get through everything that I want to talk about today. But I was just reading about some things going on in Newark overnight again, and so we'll get to that here in a second. But thank you for joining me here on this show, on this podcast. I'm excited for today. Real quick, before I actually get into what I wanted to talk about in this episode, I've got notes right here. If you're watching the camera, of a poll that came out this week from Rasmussen, who is a conservative-leaning pollster, if you're looking for what kind of methodology they might use, but they are generally pretty accurate, especially when it comes to elections. And I was reading something shocking. Almost nothing shocks me these days in government and politics and in life. It's just always something new that we just thought, man, it couldn't get any worse, or it couldn't get any weirder, or what have you. 71% of Democrats in this poll want Elon Musk in jail for what he's doing with Doge, or the Department of Government Efficiency, if you're not sure what the acronym means. Now, look, you want to sit here and debate the process and the policy. You go right ahead. I have nothing to fear about that. But nothing has been done illegally or nefariously. And the fact that immediately the left says, jail him. That's insane. But we saw that with the trial of Donald Trump. And again, there may be some legitimate concerns that people had. That's what the process plays out. I thought it was a little bit of character assassination myself. But immediately, and it's different. Don't what about me, by the way, with Hillary Clinton's emails. It's like, well, you guys went after Hillary Clinton's emails. Yeah, we did. You want to know why? Because that was proven. And it was there were whistles blown that over 30,000 emails had been deleted, things had been bleached, quote unquote, hard drives destroyed to cover information about Benghazi and a number of other things. It's not the same. Now, I'm not saying that things like, Doge and Donald Trump and shouldn't go through the court systems. We may have an opinion as to whether or not people should be going after those things. That's entirely up for debate. But the fact of the matter is that we immediately want to talk about Elon Musk going to jail for the work that he is doing on behalf of the administration, which really is an advisory role, by the way, is ridiculous. That's just bonus. I've got so much I want to get to. I've got to try to keep this to a half hour under. What is happening in aviation? That's the first topic I want to talk about. I'll give you an overview of the show. You may have heard what's going on at Newark Liberty Airport in New Jersey. Who's at fault? How will this affect each of us? What's going on across the nation? Is it safe to fly? We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the GOP's big, beautiful bill in Congress. That's the phrase that everyone's using. A large reconciliation bill that includes continuing tax cuts. We'll talk about that. And we're going to talk about the new Pope. And I am super excited because he is from near my hometown. I grew up in the Chicagoland area. We're going to talk about Pope Leo the 14th. At the end of the episode. So let's get into what's going on at Newark. And I was just, as I was starting the show, more information came out about this, but in case you're not aware of what happened at Newark Liberty International Airport in New Jersey, On April 25th of this year, there was a critical failure that occurred when the air traffic control towers at the Philadelphia Terminal Radar Approach Control, which is where a lot of these systems are for this region, which is responsible, in this case, for Newark's airspace, lost radio and radar communications with aircraft for 90 seconds. 90 seconds. And you want to know what went wrong? This as an American, this hacks me off. It's because there was a burned out copper wire, which left air traffic controllers unable to communicate with planes coming and going, taxiing, landing, departing, parking for 90 seconds, which at an airport at the size of Newark is an eternity. And what I don't understand is, what are we doing with copper wires still at these places? I have 3 fiber optic lines in the ground in front of my house that bring all kinds of fast speed internet access right here in Westfield, Indiana. And we have a major port of entry, not just for people, but for goods, using old technology that leaves. You should be outraged about this, but you shouldn't be surprised. So after that, I don't know much about the role of an air traffic control. I mean, I know what they do, but I know that it is a rigorous process. You go through psychological exams, you have a lot of education, you have a lot of training, but you also have a lot of different types of leave, especially when a traumatic event occurs. And under the Federal Employees Compensation Act, when a traumatic event such, I mean, I can't imagine if I'm sitting there and I'm in control of, I don't know, a runway, and I may be talking completely out of turn because I don't know, I don't even know an air traffic controller. But if I'm sitting there and I lose contact for 90 seconds, I've been guiding a plane in, or I'm got planes coming across the runway and I can't tell them to stop. I see something for 90 seconds. That would be incredibly traumatic for me. And so they have a leave. And so tons of people that are air traffic controllers at Newark took that leave. And you know what? I don't know that I can blame them. That's on top of the chronic staffing shortages that the Federal Aviation Administration has had for years. So don't even get started about what we just talked about with DOGE. This has been a problem for multiple presidencies that has gone unaddressed. That the nation needs 3,000 additional personnel just to meet minimum targets. Minimum targets of what we should have at these air traffic control facilities. Newark's also got some construction. They got some other things. But here's the kicker. United Airlines, which is about 3/4 of Newark's air traffic. I'm an American Airlines guy, but United Airlines flight systems, which were not part of the problem, they have decided to go ahead and reduce the amount of flights coming out of Newark. Now, the FAA has, in its crisis response, has implemented some measures, including increased staffing. Where they're getting them from, I don't know. Where were they before? Working on upgrading the communication system with fiber optics. Duh. Deploying a temporary backup system to ensure the continuity of operations. But I tell you, again, my notepad right here, my note card right here. 3:55 a.m. this morning. If you're listening, this is Friday, the 9th of May. That means this morning, a couple hours ago, there was the same exact systems shutdown or error. Now, what the cause was, I haven't seen yet. But for 90 seconds, air traffic control, radar, and communications were down. Now, maybe at 3:55 a.m. there aren't as many flights going, so maybe not as bad as what happened previously. But again, Newark is an international airport. It is a hub for people and for cargo and for a number of things. And for that to go out again is absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. So there are huge calls for systemic overhaul, and there should be. And it's just not, and that's why I wanted to bring this up. It's not just Newark. There are these types of technology concerns and staffing concerns all across the nation. And maybe this isn't going to be very conservative of me, but I think it is. If there's one place that I want pristine regulation, clear regulation, no gray area, it's going to be air traffic. It's going to public safety in general, but air traffic. You know, everybody got scared about what happened at Reagan National. And obviously, a lot of that's still being looked at and investigated. We're probably not going to know for a while. But that is going to bring seismic change to the aviation industry. And then we had kind of a slew of things. And I probably because the media is heightening that because you have one big thing and then anything that's related, even though if it's not nearly as bad, they're going to report on. It's kind of in this vein. I think air flight is completely safe. And even though Congress is looking to take a look at this, which there are very few members of Congress that I think are up to the task. We need an investment in FAA public safety. We can't have repeats like this. Twice now, we've, by the grace of God, didn't have a problem, didn't have a crash, didn't have a runway incursion. Could have happened. And so, the larger trend, and this is now I'm hearing on the internet, and this just, why? This is Donald Trump's fault. Donald Trump is to blame for Newark. Well, Donald Trump didn't install the copper wires. And the copper wires were there long before, even his first presidency. But let's look at the air traffic controlling trends for the last 10, 15 years. In 2011, there were just over 15,000 air traffic controllers. In 16, just 14,000. And in 19, just under that. Now, then the pandemic obviously caused some problems because there wasn't a lot of flight. So that number went down to about 13,700. So not a huge change. But it's continued to drop. And now in 2024... there were 13,400 air traffic controllers. But the good news is that because the FAA started to kind of see what was going on, that they exceeded their hiring goal and have got almost 2,000 new air traffic controllers, whether they're in the process or where they're at. I'm not sure of the process, but finally it's kind of coming. But there has not been a drop in, and that's what I want to say, there has not been a drop in air traffic controller numbers since President Trump took office. When you look at what was actually cut across the board, administrative and executive and support roles were cut. There is a lot of fat all across the bureaucracy, but there's one thing. Those air traffic controllers should have everything they need. There should be as many of them as we need. They should be paid a good wage. They should be trained well, because this kind of stuff can't keep happening. But even more so, we need an investment all across. Newark is not the only airport that has this kind of technology. That's what I was saying earlier, folks. There are other airports, especially older airports, that have these copper wires, that have this old technology. And who knows if we even know that there were outages like there were at Newark. So if you know a member of Congress, start knocking on their door. We need an investment in the air traffic control. We can't afford a major catastrophe in the air or on the ground. We can't have a repeat of what happened at Newark. We can't have a repeat of what happened at Washington Reagan, though that, again, that cause remains to be seen. Now let's get on to something maybe a little more lighthearted. Donald Trump's big, beautiful bill. What do you mean? What is that? That is the comprehensive legislative package that the president has asked Congress to put together, the new Congress, on a myriad of things. And I'll tell you in a second here what's in it. But you all know, hey, this isn't going to get through, right? This is going to have Republican priorities. You can maybe get it through the House, but the Senate has cloture. Well, there's a process, and you've probably heard it before, called reconciliation. Reconciliation is a legislative process that allows Congress to pass budget-related bills with a simple majority in the Senate, which bypasses the filibuster, which, again, a cloture motion is a motion that needs 60 votes that then limits debate. So the bill itself doesn't have to be passed by 60 votes. It just has to be passed by a simple majority, which is 51 senators or 50 senators plus the Vice President of the United States, who's President of the United States Senate. It limits, this reconciliation bill limits the debate in the Senate for 20 hours, to 20 hours. So it automatically creates an end. This was added in 1974 as part of the Congressional Budget Impoundment Control Act, which looked to streamline the budget-related issues, legislation, address federal spending, etc. And you can only use this so many times in a legislative session in Congress. There are some rules around that. And so what the president is asked to do is put as many fiscal matters in here as possible. Now, that's what is the kicker, is that it has to have some sort of fiscal impact. And so the parliamentarian of the Senate can rule that something is or is not germane to that process. So it has to be in some way financially related. Let's look at what's in it. So, of course, there's a budget resolution looking to cut some spending, looking to set some new priorities. Well, let's look at the process first. Let's look at the process first. So there's a resolution for the budget that is passed in both the House and the Senate, setting up the rules. And then we look at the committees. They draft proposals to align the spending and revenues to the budget resolution. The committee will then go through and mark it up, see how much it's going to cost, see if it adds to the deficit or not, to the debt. Then there'll be consolidation into a single reconciliation process, and the House and Senate will vote on those bills. But the House always has to vote first, and then if passed, it moves to the Senate. In the Senate, again, the debate is limited to 20 hours, and only budget-related amendments can be proposed. So again, I can't add on a change in a speed limit somewhere. Has to be budget-related. Again, then the parliamentarian will get to look to make sure that it's called the Byrd Rule. Robert Byrd from out east, a former U.S. senator from West Virginia. The parliamentarian will then look to make sure that the bill is germane, take out any items that are not germane. Then the Senate will pass the bill. And then if the bills are different, then the House and Senate will have to have bills reconciliation, bringing a final vote, and then bringing it to the president. And so what is in the bill? So obviously a budget resolution, setting the budget, hopefully, for the next fiscal. There are extensions of the 2017 tax cuts. That's the biggest part of this to me, is the tax cut portion. In 2017, we all received a tax cut. For me, it was about 3%. I saw about 3% increase in my paycheck through those tax cuts. A lot of people said, it was just for the rich. Now, of course, 3% to me is certainly different to someone like Bill Gates. Of course, the dollar amount is going to be bigger. That's how percentages work. And then there's certainly an argument if you wanted to give them less. Fine. But I got about 3%. Those have to be renewed by the end of this year or in 2026, or we're all going to see that go up. There's some new tax exemptions. There's obviously some border funding for border security. Obviously, a lot of the border crossings have dropped. We now need to put in some permanent infrastructure. There's obviously a defense spending increase. Again, peace through superior firepower, peace through strength. They're looking at some overhaul to the student loan repayment process, which you need to pay your bills. I get it. If people are truly hurting, there should be a process. But for the rest of us, you need to pay your bills. If you took a loan, pay your bill. They're looking at the federal pension system. They're looking at energy policy changes. Again, whether all these things make it through, not sure. The House did pass the resolution. So in that process, the House has passed their resolution. The Senate previously passed a similar resolution. And they're looking, weirdly, today is the input date. May 9th is the date which, hey, we're looking for committee and information and input. That's the deadline, is today. So we should start seeing more of this move here this spring and summer. Now let's look at some of the major roadblocks to this bill, which, again, is incredibly important in a lot of ways. But number one for me is ensuring that the tax cuts remain or grow. There is a group of about 32 House members led by Representative Smucker. And he's demanding $2 trillion in spending cuts and offsets to the proposed $4.5 trillion in tax cuts. I think that's reasonable. We should be cutting more in spending than we are in cutting revenue, cutting taxes. Obviously, some folks are worried about social programs. That definitely needs to be looked at. Deficit concerns. We have to stop at. This is one of those things. We have to stop adding to the debt. We have to. Can you imagine if you got to spend 30% more per year of the money you bring in, and it just stays on a credit card, or it stays on home equity loans, or it stays on whatever? Well, that's what the government's been doing for years. And I defended spending during COVID. The credit card, the emergency credit card, is for moments like that. We have been living like a college student who buys pizza every night on dad's credit card, and we're just expecting someone else to pick it up. We have to stop deficit spending. We have to. We'll obviously also see the Byrd rule that I talked about earlier kick in, maybe kick some of these things out. So that's obviously a roadblock. Some of the things that as the president and the Republicans' priority items could get dropped out. I mean, the tax cuts won't be. It's clearly germane related. And then, of course, there's negotiations all across. There's a lot of pressure from the public, obviously, on social programs, on tax cuts, on a number of things. Be interesting to see how this shapes and comes out. And I'm excited for it. I mean, we need a comprehensive tax overhaul. We need comprehensive spending cuts. We need, for every, I mean, people always use, for every $2 or every $1 in tax cuts, we should be cutting 2 in spending. I agree with that, or more. We can't keep living the way we're living. We can't keep spending the way we're spending. One day, it will catch up to us, whether it's in my lifetime or in my son's. It will occur at some point. Last item I've got for you today is the new Pope, which is absolutely fantastic for the Catholic Church. Now, I grew up Catholic. And for me, when I was younger, it was not a religion that spoke to me. I think it speaks to a ton of people. I've got family who are Catholic. I believe that as a spiritual moment, I believe that Catholics have a path to heaven just like the rest of the Christian faith. And so for me, this is just brothers and sisters in Christ who are just at a different section of Christianity who have elected their leader. And I am so excited for them. But anyway, if for me, not just and Pope Francis, I disagreed with a lot of positions of Pope Francis. He was an incredibly compassionate man, but I think he was against teaching against some of the Catholic Church's teachings. And so I'm excited to see this new Pope for the Catholic Church. Again, it is one of the largest subsets of Christianity. It is important. But, I was watching this on yesterday in our office as we were working, and for me, the palace intrigue and the process. I was a former advance man. If you know me, I was a former advance man for Mike Pence when he was governor, and then I got to serve him and the presidents of the United States when they were in federal office for a couple of years. I was not full time. I volunteered as they came and go, had an opportunity to go and do some advance. And as someone who is in those type of details, I love that level of detail. To watch and this is no different, to watch the pomp and the circumstance and the movements and the planning and the details and how things get from point A to point, even just watching the Cardinals come in to the Sistine Chapel in rows of 2 or 3, and they came to their seats, and then they each had to take the oath of secrecy, the pledge of secrecy, whatever it's called. Just the whole, and then the doors being closed as they went to start discussing and voting. It was very similar to like the funeral of Her Late Majesty Queen Elizabeth. I'm just a student of those type of details, and so all of it. Number 1 for my Catholic brothers and sisters celebrating, but in number 2 for me, that advance man push. It was in my heart to watch it. And so if you're not aware of how the process goes, the death or the resignation of the Pope has to occur, and then there's a process. There's 9 days of mourning, followed by the preparation for a conclave. Cardinals, which are senior representatives of the church across the world, are called to the Vatican. The ones that are under the age of 80 are eligible to vote. And this time, there was 133 cardinals eligible to vote, the most in history. Of course, they seal the papal apartments in all areas where voting will occur. It's just kind of the process. And then the cardinals attend a series of meetings called general congregations to discuss the needs of the church. Then there's, of course, the opening ceremony, which, again, was fantastic. I loved the intentionality. Obviously, it was very spiritual, especially for Catholic brothers and sisters. And then there's an election process. So the first night there was one. So they did all of the ceremony, and then there was the first ballot, which of course brought the dark smoke, the black smoke. And then there are 4 votes held per day after that until they get a pope. 2 in the morning, 2 in the evening. And a candidate must receive 2/3 majority of those elected, which I hadn't done the math. 80, 87, 88. I'm not a mathematician. I told you that last week. And then once a pope is chosen, he has to choose a papal name. And I didn't know this either. Actually, I heard this last week, that any baptized Catholic male is eligible. Anyone. Now, I think tradition has been that it comes out of the conclave, out of the cardinals. And no different, it did. And then, of course, you see the ceremony and the first blessing and the public appearance, which was just really, really neat. It was a really, really neat process. And so now we have Pope Leo XIV. And I'm excited because he is from near where I'm from. He's from the Chicagoland area. He was from Illinois. He's from Dalton, Illinois. 69 years old. So a younger Robert Prevost. And I'm excited because he's a Bears and a Sox fan. At least I think he is. But it's historic, the first American pope in history, which is absolutely, absolutely amazing for the American Catholic Church. And there's a lot to do in the Catholic Church. There's some fiscal matters. Obviously, there are all kinds of moral matters that have gone on over the years in the Catholic Church. And I hope and I pray that Pope Leo has the strength and the fortitude and the blessing to address these issues. Again, does this affect people who are non-Catholic? I think it does. I think it affects overall the position of Christianity. And I hope and pray that he addresses all of those issues, and during his time as Pope, that he will strengthen the Christian church around the world through his work. With that, friends, I've just under 30 minutes right now. If I don't say too big of a Midwestern goodbye, I had to cut a bunch of things that I wanted to talk about. There was just so much. thank you for joining me again today here on the Mike on the Right podcast. I am so thankful for each of you. The first episode last week was just so fun for me, and to get pictures of people listening to it in their cars, and I was at a Republican event here earlier this week, and friends and folks coming up to me and saying, we listened, great job, keep it up. That encouragement has meant the world to me. At church, everywhere. It's meant the world to me. So thank you for your support. I'm going to continue to slog ahead. I know it takes a lot of time to establish a podcast, and I'm committed to do it. Thank you so much for listening. I can't wait to see you next week.